Yeah, hello everyone. This is the Flux Dev meeting. Today is Wednesday, the 28th of October. We moved this meeting to Zoom because Google Meet stopped allowing us to record the meetings. So I'll take an action to move the meeting over to Zoom. I think the CNCF has some Zoom infrastructure we can use. So I'll look into that. Do we have any other announcements?
Did we announce the governance thing? Should we mention that?
Yeah, I think that it was last meeting where we discussed it as well, or the one before. And we finally were able to merge it. Thanks a lot to Scott seeing this through. And now we have like better rules for the project, like how, what kind of expectations we have from maintainers. If you haven't seen it yet, I'll add it to the agenda doc as well. It's in the Flux CD community repository. And yeah, I think that's all I had for now. And we have Philip here today who wanted to give a demo of the Terraform provider.
Yeah, I guess I can share. Yeah, sure. It's just gonna share my screen. Hopefully that works. Everybody can see it.
Yep.
Right? Yeah, I'll just build like this. So it's, yeah, so, sorry.
Make this way bigger.
Yeah,
yep.
Okay, there we go. There we go. So yeah, so the provider that I've built is kind of simple. It exposes, I'll pull up, I've built this example for GitHub, basically, but it exposes two data sources. So here, the provider definition does not really take any parameters in. So here's the provider, and then these are the two data sources that it actually creates or exposes to the user. So one is now called GoToK install. We should always change that considering the name changes, and GoToK sync. These reflect the two kind of manifest generation things that are present in the CLI currently. So the install manifest generation and the sync manifest generation. The provider currently uses a my fork of the toolkit repo because I needed to break out the sync manifest generation code into a separate package so that it can be imported. So what this does, this is kind of an example for Git. It uses the GoToK provider, kubectl provider, Kubernetes provider, and GitHub provider. So it does, for the most part, most of what the Bootstrap logic already does today. So it creates a SSH key. It creates these data sources for the install. The install returns a manifest, which we're going to see later, containing the CRDs and the actual controller deployments. And then the sync contains a Git repository resource and a customization. So that's kind of where we're passing parameters here. So the Terraform is kind of not in order, but down here for the GitHub part, we are creating a GitHub repository, a deploy key in GitHub, and 3 repository files. We then, kind of, we go up here, we are creating the GoToK install components, like just return the manifest, and then the sync. And the sync, we're passing the target path, which I think is called path in the CLI. So we should probably change that also, and the URL to the repo. And in this case, the GitHub provider returns the SSH clone path with the Git protocol. So it's just replacing Git with SSH, because otherwise the Flux will complain. And the last part is we are applying the document files to the cluster. So here, this thing here is kind of special because The install manifest is returned as a multiple YAML documents with the YAML separator. So the kubectl provider, which is described or built by a third party, requires you to split those YAML documents or that YAML file into separate YAML documents. So that's what this does. So it takes the variable component manifest content and basically splits it into multiple YAML documents, and then you loop through them and apply them. What I'm doing here is basically I'm taking a list and I'm converting it to a map where the key is the SHA of the value. And the reason I'm doing this is kind of a trick in Terraform, because if you were to do a count of this, if the order of the resources changes, Terraform will consider that a change in the state and it will try to reapply it. So what we're doing basically here is, as long as the content doesn't change, we're not reapplying the install manifest basically. So it's kind of a small trick. But really, this is up to the end user. This is more of an example of how you can do it. If you want to run all resources and run kubectl apply, that's totally possible too. There's no real requirement of how you want to install this. And then we're doing the same with the customization and the resource. And then we're also just creating a secret with the SSH key that we created. And the deploy key here also we're creating passing the same SSH key. And here the whole GitHub repository file, it basically does a commit for you. And because I've changed a bit so that together with the content of the manifest, we're also returning the file path that we're expecting. So that way we can just pass the file path here so that when it applies or commits in the right file path. So that's kind of it. For the most part, this is what we built. And we're
one thing here in the secret data, you also have to put their identity pub. So in
okay.
Source controller also doesn't require it, but it's part of our API. It was requested feature in Flux. So you have the private key in the secret, but you also have the public key in the secret. So people can easily use kubectl to get the public key. Otherwise, you have to get the private key, and you have to figure out how to extract the public key, which is not something you can do with a simple command. So here is identity.pub.
I'll do like this. And,
another thing, can we generate the non-hosts like we do?
We should probably be able to do that. I couldn't bother fix that. I had some issues generating it. It wasn't really taking it. So I just hard coded it for now just to get it working. I don't think there's going to be an issue with generating the non-host. It was just more laziness than anything. So I'll run through an example. I just need to do I'm running this with kind right now. The more normal situation would be that you're using Terraform to create your AKS or EKS or GKE cluster, and then after that creation, you're jacking in this stuff to kind of bootstrap your cluster with the same logic. So if we're just going to get the control plane, hopefully it usually doesn't take too long. I can quickly, probably not. Let's see if this starts. Always during demos, starting these types of things takes a long time. Yeah, great. So now we have a clean cluster with nothing in it. And if we now run, what I've done is, I can maybe show you this also. So there are two variables here, three, the branch, the GitHub owner, and the token. I've exported these as environment variables using export tf _var _ and then the variable name, just so they don't have to have write my token to file. But a more normal use case would probably be that you take your GitHub token, put it into say Key Vault or secret manager or something like that, and then you'd read the actual token back with Terraform. So applying this gives us, so it's going to refresh the state for everything there. And so it's going to tell us, yeah, let's create the secret, the keys, all the manifests. It's going to be a lot if we scroll through. You run yes, and it runs through everything, and it just waits for everything to get done. If we can just creating, we can actually probably jump to
Does it also check the ready status of the customization?
No, I don't think it will do that. So what I'm currently using to do this is I'm using this provider here. Let's just, it's not this one. So the Kubernetes provider does not give you an option to just apply arbitrary files. So it requires you to actually write like YAMLs in HCL. So this is a provider that basically allows you to run kubectl, but in Terraform. I don't know how well it does like status checks and stuff like that. So we should probably check that. I know that it waits for resources to create. So let's see, where's my terminal? There it is. So
but can
I can probably verify.
Can we run arbitrary kubectl commands with it? Can we do a kubectl wait? If we can do that, then we can wait for the customization and show people if it did work or not.
When this kind of deployment, the provider will wait for the deployment to roll out automatically for you. So yeah, you can set this wait flag. So we can, it defaults to false, but we can probably set it to true. And then you're going to wait for all the resources. So in that case, yes. It's always,
So we need wait for rollout. So it waits for all the controllers to spin up. That's for sure. So when we apply the install script, we can enable wait for rollout.
Yeah. But that's always true. So that's kind of why it's waiting.
Oh, okay.
So we run Terraform apply. It's actually waiting for the deployments to be to. That's why it took so long time. Otherwise, it would just like run through and say, yeah, I applied the manifests, and now I'm fine. So go to K here. We have everything running. We have our customization. We can actually do like this. Test provider test. That's kind of what I call the repo now. So here it is. It's just created. You have all your files. What's missing here is the customization file that I just need to fix so that it also adds that. It's kind of not a requirement for it to work still, but it should reflect what the CLI does. So if we just create a new file and call it config-map.yaml, API version 1. Test is to default. There. So we just add a new file there to it. We should see that eventually it should be 9. I think it's, what is the default value? It's 1 minute.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's during, in the meanwhile, we can actually, let's go back. So there are a lot of parameters that are actually exposed in this provider. So we're just not setting them. So the same variables or things that you can set in the CLI should be able to be set in the provider. So we're just basically exposing these as, or redefining them as Terraform variables and Terraform types. And then we're using this whole options thing to set them in the read function. So these data sources only implement the read function. While normal resource, you have to implement the full CRUD, but we're basically just reading from this. So, and then we are using the generate from the toolkit package. So that way, if we update the toolkit dependency, we will automatically be able to just get the newest changes that the CLI gets into the provider. So if we jump back here also, we should have so there it is. So we get the full end-to-end working also.
Nice. So we definitely need to add the customization.yaml in that directory. So it does the same stuff as Bootstrap from a Git perspective. And what I think we should do is, if you go back to your source code where you had all those options in the provider.
Here, for example,
okay, so all these defaults, can we take them from the Golang package?
The actual variables, no, it's going to be difficult because you need to actually define each as strings, unless the Golang package exposes this schema map, because it's the schema that defines what each Terraform resource or data source accepts as input parameters. So in theory, the package could expose this, and then we would go like install.terraform schema.
Yeah, my main concern is that you'll have to keep this in sync with the CLI defaults, in sync with the controller defaults, in sync with API defaults. So there are, the more we copy paste them around, the harder it will be to change them after. Especially here, for example, the component string, right?
Yeah. So it's kind of, so Terraform has these options of basically, there are optional parameters and the required parameters. So what we could do is we could set everything to optional and then use the defaults from make default options, and then just remove the default options from the Terraform schema to avoid having to like repeat the default values. That's one option.
Yeah. And maybe here in the make default options, we can get the actual strings from the package, from the Golang package. Could we do that?
So here all the default values are already defined. So
nice.
In theory, what we could do is, because there is a default func, so what you can do is run this and get the default value from make default. So that's actually another option to do that. That actually might be better.
Okay. I'm not keen on Terraform things, but what I really like to do is get rid of copy pasting all the defaults here. So whatever solution you think is best, let's do that. So can you tell us what we need to do to make this provider official?
More than just merging the toolkit changes, we need to publish it to the Terraform registry, and I just take my repo and move it into FluxDB. So that's and I don't actually know. I think you also need to sign, or you should sign your your provider build. So yeah, so you should create a signing key basically. So we need somebody who holds some sort of official GPG key. But I don't know if that's a requirement yet to actually do it, because it hasn't been in the past. I just think it's a best practice thing. But we can, from GitHub Actions, just deploy these or push these to the Terraform registry.
What is it with signing?
Sorry?
What needs to be signed by a PGP key?
The actual binary.
But we can create a Keybase account with a team. Then there can be put in a PGP key, and then we can use the Keybase account in our automation to automatically sign the binary. That's not too hard.
Yeah. So it's basically setting up the repo. Somebody needs to set up like some sort of connect the Flux CD organization to the Terraform registry, and then we set up a GitHub action to publish the binaries, and we have to build them for. Or that's kind of easy. We just use Box or something to compile them for Windows and for Linux and for Darwin. So I don't think there's nothing complicated. It's just a bunch of small steps really to get this working.
Looks like there's maybe a handful of things that would make it on the GitOps toolkit side that would make it a bit smoother as well. I'm thinking of early on, you had to replace the protocol part or the scheme part of a URL.
Yeah,
there's it would be good to know if you are able to kind of jot them down, what those things are as well.
Mm-hmm.
I imagine.
Yeah, I think together with the provider, we should publish the examples.
Mm-hmm.
So that when someone comes there, they can basically go, oh, I'm running GitHub, so I'll just take the examples here, because that kind of shows the best practices.
Yeah, this is the line I'm thinking of. So, I mean, I don't think there's any reason that the source controller or whatever can't understand Git URLs, is there? It's just an extra case somewhere.
I'll create an issue for this actually, then, if that's the case.
Cool, thank you. Yeah, and if anything else is a bit like that comes up, same thing.
The only issue that I found is that the GitHub Terraform provider seems to be the only provider that allows you to create files in the repo with Terraform. So all other providers allows you to create a repository, but not actually commit anything. So I probably need to create some generic Git example of how you do this, but just pure Git commit. And I've looked at, there's an issue for, I think, the GitLab and the Azure DevOps provider to add this functionality. So we can nudge people to go, yeah, if you want this, you should probably just go fix it.
We have a package that does all of that. Called Git, that does the Git cloning, commits the YAMLs, does a diff. If the commit changed anything, then it pushes. So it's just a matter of importing the Flux CD /package/git here and pipe the token to it and the URL, and it should work.
Yeah. So that's kind of the only thing missing there, is to figure out like good examples for non-GitHub users. But but it's like I really see this as a way of getting the whole I need a Helm chart complaint.
Yeah,
like
definitely
away.
Now I don't know if this Terraform code should be in the toolkit repo or have its own repo. It's just another flavor of install, so, and they need to be in sync all the time.
Yeah. So the only thing, so we're just going to we could create a separate command or main package, because this is kind of the only thing you need to do in your main package to make it like the provider work. Then you have your provider package here. So that package could technically live in the toolkit. And then we wouldn't have to deal with, oh, I updated the toolkit. Now I need to go update the Terraform provider also. So yeah.
Yeah,
so
and we can also test them together as part of our bootstrapping test. We'll be running the CLI bootstrap, then we'll be running Terraform bootstrap for the same GitHub. We have the token, everything set up. We have a special organization just for these bootstrap tests. Yeah, I'm guessing the main Go here can live in a command, in a command tier, and it should work, right?
Yep.
And we'll have Flux in the command that builds the CLI, and we'll have Terraform, or however we call it, another directory with this main file that builds the Terraform provider. But I would try hard to keep them in the same repo for many reasons.
No, I totally understand that. And I don't think I have no issue with it. I think it's a better way of doing it if we're going to have two install processes. So then your other comment about let's see here. I'm sorry, no, actually I have to. So your comment about the size of the binary also, because it was 50 megabytes, I think it was something like that. That's kind of, I don't really know how to do that. I haven't really done that before, running separate Go modules in the same project. No, sorry. Let's see if this works. So one big thing that's being pulled in is the whole reflection thing in Go, because Terraform needs that to do a lot of stuff. It's kind of scary how it solves a lot of these types of dynamic findings of variables. But yeah, it's so the Flux stuff isn't really the major parts of it. It's so it's all the Kubernetes dependencies together with runtime that kind of takes up the majority of the size of the provider. And I don't think we need everything. So that's another thing. It's a small thing. It might just be just a nice thing to do to reduce the size of the provider.
Yeah, we can figure it out after we publish a first version. Yeah. It's a long way there, so I think size is not that important compared to figuring out signing and how to make this work from the same repo. Because my understanding from the Terraform docs is that you have to publish the Terraform provider binary on GitHub, and they'll download it from there, or with Go release.
I've never published anything to the registry because I haven't really migrated everything to Terraform 13 yet. but it seems like, yeah, it seems like that's what you're supposed to do. So create extra copy.
Because we already have code releaser and everything else in there.
Yeah. Or no, it says they're publishing to the registry. And signing key. Yeah, it seems like okay, sorry, this might not be the best forum to sit and search things if there's something more important to talk about. I can't actually find anything here.
So with the provider, we can provide both things, right? We can have the install command as it is in the CLI, just installs all the controllers, doesn't do any kind of Git things. And you can also do Bootstrap with GitHub, right? But you can also do install, right?
Yeah, so that's kind of why I split it up into two separate data sources, is to give the option if you only want to do the install, you can only do the install. If you actually also want to have the bootstrapping, you can also do the bootstrapping.
Nice.
So yeah, but I think the next thing to do is then in that case to create a PR of this in Toolkit.
No, first we need to figure out the refactoring. I want to introduce a manifest object that exposes the path and the content and use that everywhere.
Yeah, I saw that.
So in your provider, you'll be calling a command from the Go package. It will turn an output object that contains a list of manifests, and that should be more nicer, straightforward on how to use it. And after we merge that, can you go through the publishing steps for your own repo on your own account, figuring that out? And once you figure it out, then make an issue, create a plan for, okay, first we move the provider in its own thing inside the Toolkit repo. And these are the steps that we should be doing to get publishing running. Because if it's just there, people will start asking, hey, how can I use it? It only works for Linux because it's compiled that way and so on, right? So I want to prevent that. And when we actually move it to the repo, we know what to do and people can use it.
Yeah. So I'll try to fix the comments you had there. There were good comments on the Toolkit changes, the refactoring. I hope it was okay, my refactoring there. I tried to remove the whole file creation thing because I got a bit confused with that to the separate, just for the CLI specific stuff. So it might simplify things for the next person coming around looking at how manifests are generated. So now I have a plan at least of how we move forward.
Well, thank you very much,
So that should be fine.
For all this work. It looks
it's really neat.
Yep.
And it looks like it works really well in sympathy with other bits of Terraform. I think that's well considered.
Yeah, that's kind of why I end up writing a lot of Terraform providers. It's mostly because it works pretty nice with everything that I already have. So
kind of a force multiplier, isn't it? You get the greater than the sum of the parts. Yeah.
Great. Do we have anything else on the agenda today, or? Stop sharing.
I think we do.
Should we discuss about the renaming?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So we we have renamed the copyright header. Michael, you need to approve the two pull requests.
Oh, sure. Yeah, I'll do. And I can probably muck in on doing some of the other ones as well if they're not already done.
We want to get the semver change before the renaming so we don't break things twice.
Oh, that changing to back to masterminds or changing to masterminds.
Yeah, changing to mastermind the strict.
Yeah, so do all the breaking changes at one time in one release.
I prepared a PR for it last night for the source controller.
Do we need it anywhere else, Hide?
In the image controllers, I think they do some semver sorting. Or are they already using masterminds?
Yeah, they do. So it's already using masterminds, but it doesn't. It uses the. I think I'm going on memory now. It uses the strict parsing, so it won't admit things with a V. So
then you just need to switch to the version package. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, okay. I'm not concerned about the image controllers because they are not part of the toolkit. So to focus on renaming, we only need semver in source controller. Then do we do a release today, Hide? Do you think we can do that of the source controller? Or do we want to get?
Let me think. I was reviewing the PR for the added support for Helm chart dependencies. But I think I found a bug, so I'm not sure we want to wait on that. I mean, we can get it in with the patch release. So, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I reckon get the controllers released with that and the annotation change.
There is also a breaking change in the metrics, right? Because we publish the runtime comes with different metrics names, even if we publish it for the annotation change, but before your annotation change, there was a breaking change in the metrics.
So there's another unrelated breaking change.
Yeah.
Got it. Okay, yes. So 3 breaking changes. Yeah, do them all at once, definitely, and get it out there.
So when we updated the runtime package, that comes with the new metric change. What we need to be sure is that runtime, the latest version, is used everywhere in all controllers before we do a release. And then I can change all the dashboards because everything will have the same metric name again. So.
Got it. I updated runtime in at least a few of them, but I had that umbrella bug that had the checklist, and some of them didn't actually use the annotation, so I may not have updated every single one of them. E.g. notification controller.
I did that yesterday.
Okay.
And I linked to your issue.
Yeah, so a few of them will have got updated by me, but not all of them.
So we have customize controller, Helm controller, notification controller. Oh, source controller is not there. Okay, so Hide, can you do that?
Can I do what?
Pull the metadata and the runtime package in source controller.
Yeah, once I'm done with reviewing this and tidying up the other PR, yes, sure.
I can do it. I can do that if it's not there. Then I think we are good with the packages. So
yeah, please continue.
So we have to decide today what to do with source controller if it's done. If it's done, we release the API, and then we have to update all the controllers to the new source controller API. Then do a controller's release, then do the name change.
What's changed in the API? Or you just want it to be the most recent one?
We changed there is a new thing in the API. 1 second.
It's okay. I just didn't know there was a new thing. You don't need to find it and tell me what it is.
Yeah, so we have support for loading packaged charts. That's the big thing that got merged into source controller. It contributed by Relu. He's a Romanian guy.
He has been contributing a lot, and he's eager for more. So one thing I would like to ask you is I've been working on this migration guide for the Helm operator users, and it's already starting to become pretty lengthy. To have a read, or at least read through it, see if the structure reads all right. And then I will continue to add all the changes. But if I add them now and it turns out that it's impossible to read all that's in the guide, then I should probably think about restructuring it. I will put a link in the Flux contributors channel.
So we cannot rename the repo without changing the readme. It would be really awkward. So Michael, can you work today on the what's Flux v2?
Oh, without changing the README, yeah. Yes, I have meetings dotted about this morning, but I get a bit freer in the afternoon.
Cool. Because I'm guessing that's the only place where we need to change it so the name makes sense. Afterwards, we'll be working on the new docs website, and in time we'll be moving everything to the website repo, and that's it. So, but for the renaming, I'm thinking changing the README text, changing the landing page of the toolkit.fluxcd.io website, and that should be, let's say.
Yeah, and once the README text is done, it can be transplanted. Is that, at least to some extent, it can be transplanted to the homepage?
Yep. Yeah, it's right now it's a copy paste from README in the homepage of the doc site. So we can do the same. And there are some, so most guides and other docs. 1 second. So for example, in the webhook receiver guides, it begins with the GitOps toolkit controllers are by design pool-based, blah, blah, blah. And there are many references to the GitOps toolkit controllers.
Yeah, so what do you reckon? Worth just doing a search to see if they all still make sense in context, or whether some of them should be changed?
No, I think the introduction should state out what's the relationship between things, right? Okay. The controllers and API are part of the toolkit, and Flux is an opinionated thing of all these toolkit controllers as we see it fit.
Okay.
Or things. So it doesn't, I don't think we have to replace everything in all the docs, but I think we should address this in the introduction. So
yeah, right, got it. Yes,
that's the
Makes
only
sense.
And yeah, I think we are ready. It will take like a day probably to replace all things in the toolkit, brew formula and other stuff, but I think by Friday we can do it and announce Flux v2 Monday, at least on our Slack channel. Daniel, you have a plan for a blog post or?
Yes. So I was going to do the monthly update and get it out on Tuesday, so we can still include something there.
That's good timing.
Yeah, if you let me know what to write, like what breaking changes, like it would be great to have a list of all the things. Yeah.
Yeah, we should do a, what changes now thing, shouldn't we? At least so we can put that in places.
All right, I'll note this down.
Yeah, the breaking changes in terms of APIs and dashboards are not that huge. But we are going to change the default namespace, and that hurts a lot, because if you run the install command, you'll get two Fluxes running in parallel. They will fight each other because there is no leader election. The leader election works inside the namespace. So our early adopters already went through that once, but there are more people now using the toolkit. So we definitely have to tell them, hey, you need to delete the old namespace, remove everything from there. Otherwise, you'll be running into lots of problems.
Yeah, and even just saying the name has changed, people will, as soon as you say that, people will think like, oh no. So you need to have that follow on and say, what does this mean for you? Well, you'll have to go and do this. Sorry about that. But after that, we promise not to change it again for at least 3 weeks.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll try to write that down. The upgrade from GOTK CLI to Flux CLI, and what it implies to replace the namespace if you use the default. If you didn't use the default and you specified your own namespace, that's fine. But I'm guessing most people are using our default. So I'll write that down. I'll post it in our discussions and pin that at the top, linking to the renaming discussion and saying, hey, from this moment on, you have to do these steps to switch to Flux CLI. And maybe that text can be also placed in a blog post, not just a link. So people...
Yeah, we can stick it in a little thing at the top of the README as well. You know how we have little things from time to time.
Announcements, yeah.
Yeah, announcements.
Yeah, that's a great idea, yeah.
Change name, go look here.
We can link the discussion from the main README of Flux to repo, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
Cool. I'm really happy to do this, finally.
Good.
Yes,
Everything stable.
Sorry. Go ahead. Speaking of announcing things, so Scott and I talked. Scott and I were just approved as maintainers of the community repo yesterday, and we talked about because it was already mentioned in the governance doc to set up a community team. And one thing the community team could own would be like communications of, for example, breaking changes or other things that happen. And the idea we had, it's not set in stone. We just tossed the idea around. So I'll just mention it here briefly, that we basically have like we could just use a spreadsheet where like all the maintainers have access to, and they could just note down noteworthy things. And then the community team, the Flux community team, could go and announce it in, let's say, the next blog posts or Michael, you're raising your hand.
I have one.
Yeah. The process is not set up yet. I'm just throwing it out there as a thing, but that we also mention it on the mailing list, on Slack, on Twitter. I saw that Scott registered a Twitter handle for Flux, but that in the future, like a small team of people own this, and we can make sure to get the news out everywhere.
Yeah, I think we ended up using that. We ended up removing that from the governance as it was merged.
Yeah.
But I think it's a good idea that we figure out how to kind of charter that
Exactly.
community team in short order.
Yeah. So that's coming in the next
for all of that sort of stuff, because there's a bunch of stuff that isn't Git repos that someone needs to own.
Yeah,
That's
especially with Flux right now weighing in at 24 repos, it gets harder and harder to keep track of all the stuff that's happening. So
bing, 25.
No.
Sorry, yeah, no, 24.
Okay, and one more thing. Here's a quick announcement from Stacy. There's going to be a second part of the GitOps Toolkit guide walkthrough. I think that is Lee doing it. Can't remember. So that's happening on November the 2nd. Did anyone have anything else you wanted to talk about?
So people are pinging me, why isn't the meeting happening? Because I don't know, David sees it like it should start now.
The daylight saving. So we finally got it figured out. The CNCF calendar had screwed things up, and now, now it turns out daylight savings has screwed things up again. Is that?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's correct, because I just received a notification for a meeting at 12.
See, it was correct in my calendar. I don't know.
Same here.
I have no
This
idea.
time.
Correct for me too.
Was it denominated in UTC? Is that?
I
think that was the initial problem, and
yeah, I think
something like that.
See. Anyway,
hopefully this will be the last time we have daylight savings in Europe, at least. So hopefully.
True.
Yeah, let's see. Okay, I guess I'll need somebody to help me test the new meeting settings. So, any one of you volunteering? I'm happy to look into setting up the new meeting, but I think it would be good that we.
Oh yeah, I'll give you a hand, Daniel, if you.
Yeah, super.
Doing that
All
today,
right.
whatever. Does someone want to drop into the Google meeting and tell people, or are they?
I mean, would ping.
It's on now. I mean, that people think is on now.
I mean, I let people know on Slack what's happening. So, yeah, okay. I think we can wrap this meeting up.
Okay.
All right. Have a good one, everyone. See you in Slack.
Bye.
Yeah. Bye. Thanks for the demo, Philip. It was cool.
Yeah.
Thank you.
See ya.